Hello everybody, welcome to another video on the channel. Today I am bringing you footage from Malaysia, round 12 of the AOR Season 15 F7 split calendar. We have come back from two fantastic Grand Prix where we scored back-to-back victories in both Singapore and Austria, where we also took pole positions at both of those circuits, and has helped us really to make some good inroads into that previously monumental lead that Wattmaster had in the championship, closing that gap down now to about 42 points. But coming into this Grand Prix, not feeling very good about the outcome whatsoever. Malaysia is a circuit that I would compare my performance to of places such as China and Baku, where although did score podium positions at those Grand Prix, wasn't very happy with my car performance and my driving. And just to make matters worse, if you have noticed, it is raining, and the only place so far on the calendar where it's had a wet qualifying session was Monza, and there was one of the places where our race performance was greatly impacted on our qualifying, as we had to do a lot of overtaking. Unfortunately, only end made it second position, where we could have been possibly challenging for the win in terms of outright pace. So in terms of my setup for how I'm tweaking it to try and make it best for the changing conditions of both qualifying and the race, I've left downforce at a similar level but just up the rear wing to give myself a bit more stability in some of those high speed corners. Also reduce the brake pressure and the weight distribution to slightly further forward to make sure that I don't end up with too much twitchiness in some of those corners, particularly corners such as turn 15 and turn 9. You get some really heavy oversteer at the best of times, especially at the beginning of a race on heavy fuel load. So I want to try and reduce that as much as possible, because wet weather racing is all about making sure you get good traction and good exits out of the corners and maximise your top speed on the straights. So starting the qualifying session now, want to try and get in a decent banker lap, especially at the beginning of this session, as the weather is only going to improve. So later on we really want to make sure we've got something on the board so that we can push as hard as we can. So out of the final corner, see already getting wheel spin coming out of there in 4th gear, heading down towards turn 1, 8th gear, going down into lean fuel mix to try and reduce wheel spin. Really deep and dangerous braking zones. Overtaking is possible into turn 1, but if you get it wrong you can cause accidents. Slowly through turn 2, and then really trying to ease the throttle on to get good traction. You see fighting the car, just trying to keep a hold of it as we go through the long right hander of turn 3, coming to the closing stages of sector 1. Not a fantastic sector, but so far very difficult to know how we're doing relative to others because no other times have been set. Through the sweeping left and right of turns 5 and 6, and running a bit wide of that apex and not really getting the drive out of that corner that we would want, losing time as every second passes. Wattmaster goes and sets himself a time to go on provisional pole, and then just trying to get through a double right hander turn 7, 8 and get good traction as we head towards turn 9. Down a hairpin, very tricky braking zone in the wet, really difficult to try and make sure you don't lose the back end, as Rance goes and sets a time that's almost half a second up on the provisional pole time as we clumsily try and make our way through turn 11, heading towards the fast and very tricky section of 12, 13 and 14. 14 is a horrible corner that I dislike very much. You can't see the apex until you basically hit it, and then that one pole is the only reference point you have, and in the race it is incredibly frustrating from a driver's point of view when someone knocks that down, and it makes it even more difficult to try and tackle. So into the final corner as we're coming to the end of this lap. It's been a slightly scrappy but not too bad a lap so far. Maximum fuel mixture as we come to the line is going to be a 1:47.5, a second down on France's time already. So not bad, but could be much better. But as we progress through the transitioning period in the weather for the qualifying session, the track is drying out, and now we find ourselves with 3.5 minutes to go in a very tricky scenario about the state in which the track is in. Is it suited for intermediate tyres, or is it suited for dry tyres? Also upping downforce just slightly on that front wing to give a little bit more bite into those high speed corners, because even though the track may be drying out, carrying corner speed onto those straights is definitely the way to go. But now looking at the weather. It's meant to clear up in about 5 minutes time to go onto dry tyres, but with 3 minutes to go, is it really suited for dry tyres, or should we go with the intermediates? No times as of yet have been set on the dry tyres, and every second that goes by is another second lost, but the track is improving every single time. What do we do? Do we risk it and go for the dry tyres but then possibly plummet down the order if it's not the right way to go? Or do we go and give it everything we have and maybe have a shot at pole position? Trying to look at the times, no one has set anything yet, and looking at the TV screen to see that everyone besides one lone Sauber so far is on the intermediate tyres, and I can still see spray coming off those wheels, but with just over 2 minutes to go, it is drying out, and by the point we would start our lap, would it be dry enough? Another Mercedes goes past with the dry tyres on. So we're going to make the call. We're going to put the dry tyres on. In this changing conditions, the soft tyres are better in the cooler temperatures, so we're going to put those on. It's a tough call, but we're going to try and go out now to set a lap to see if we can challenge for pole position for the Malaysian Grand Prix. Well, that didn't work. And unfortunately, it didn't work for us, and we would end up dropping down to 7th position. You can see the dry tyres at the end of that were by far the superior tyre, and in doing so we have put ourselves in a very tricky position for the start of this Grand Prix behind our championship rival Wattmaster. And really, we could have easily put ourselves in the top 3, but nevertheless, we shall see what we can do. It's a shame because I think dry pace wise probably had some very good pace in the car to try and challenge for pole position, but what's done is done. Going into the race now, there's nothing that can be changed about it. Going to drop that wing back down to number 4. You can see the weather switches between bone dry to very, very heavy rain and then starts to dry up at the end of the race. So we're going to take a little bit of fuel out of the car because we'll end up saving that fuel again at the end stage of the race using lean fuel mixture to try and help us with traction and tyre wear out of some of those corners. Going to start on the soft tyres because they should be able to take us through to that wet stage, but also as the weather starts to transition, the operating temperature of these soft tyres is a little less fragile than super soft, so we should still have decent grip as we go into that part of the Grand Prix. So the lights are coming on, we are waiting, bringing in the clutch, holding the revs, and we are away, trying to get a good start. A little bit of wheels in. Wattmaster gets a fantastic launch, and so does Taisu behind us, trying to cover him on the inside, but he's already alongside us, so we do have to give him a little bit of room. Heading down to turn 1, trying to brake as late as possible. We've gone at the inside of Wattmaster, tiny bit of wheel bang. We're going to get sandwiched between Taisu and the Sauber next to us, so we go into turn 2. Wattmaster trying to come back at us into that corner, but we get a good exit, rich fuel mixture, and using the toe of the cars ahead, we should be able to keep this P6. So we're up 1 position into turn 3. Just braking as late as possible, close in the distance. Been contact between Rupo and Rance in front of us. Taisu's got involved in that as well, has damaged a bit of his wing. As we come through turns 5 and 6, Taisu on the outside of us, holding it inside to give him room, but he just doesn't have the downforce to keep it there. Sauber going wide on the exit as we go into the double right-hander at turns 7 and 8. He has quite poor traction out of here because of those dirty tyres. We're going to try and see if we can use the toe to make some sort of move down the hair, but we're just too far back. And at this early stage of the race, there's no point in taking risks like that. He gets a slightly bad exit, trying to get power down, but no such luck. And for now, we shall have to stay in fourth position. We actually get a bit caught out by him braking early. What a start. Very chaotic, very dangerous, but somehow through all of the chaos, we've managed to gain 3 positions and keep our nose clean at the same time, which is very important to us. See, massive gap to Neil behind us as the chaos that took place in turn 3 and afterwards has caused dramatic shifts in the way that the original grid started. Wattmaster, our championship rival, the dot that you see at the very, very back of the field, that is his car. Contact with Rams going through the fast left and right hander where we had such a tight battle with Taisu has put him down to the back of the grid. So maybe this is a way in which we can really get some decent points out of this Grand Prix and close up to him in terms of championship. We're still only on lap 2, long way to go, and we need to see what we can do. Reflecting back from Tyson's point of view, got a great launch, especially on those super soft tyres. Fantastic traction off the line and put us immediately under pressure. See, tried to cover him off, but he was just close enough so that I wasn't able to do anything. Braked incredibly deep into the first corner. You see, so close, and you see a bit of desyncing must have taken place during this part of the corner, because no contact from his point of view whatsoever, but obviously on our screen there was a bit of wheel banging. Gets himself up into 4th position and going down into turn 3. So we get past Sauber, there's been contact between the Ferrari, and he clips the back of Rance right at the end and damages a bit of his wing as then we come through on the inside. And just with that damage, isn't able to hold it on the track, would then get a terrible exit going into double right-hander, and similar to the Sauber that we started to challenge. The dirty tyres and the damaged front wing in this case means he is completely under pressure from both the Renault and the Rance, who is coming back, and Rance has absolutely dive bombed it, and it's just complete chaos. It's a massive sandwich as they go up the hill. Cars having to fly across the left-hand side of the track to try and avoid the chaos. Still contact left, right, and centre. And for Taisu, that was a dreadful, dreadful start. It was non-stop chaos through turns 1, 2, and 3, and unfortunately for him, he's dropped from P4, challenging for probably 2nd place if he managed to avoid that contact, all the way down to P10, and now has a damaged car as well. So going into the beginnings of lap 2, and the chaos hasn't ended yet. See, cars jostling position up in front of him. He's got a decent gap to them, so he can afford to pick his line and choose where he wants to go. Levingston goes for a move on Rance and makes some sort of contact, slows up the Renault on the apex again. Unfortunately, Tyson making contact with the back of another car as Levingston has to drop back. So really unfortunate, bad start for him in this race, where he could possibly have really been up there challenging. There's a Sauber in front of us going back on board with our race, gets a terrible exit out of that very fast right-hander, and that leaves him very vulnerable as we go down into the hairpin of turn line, trying to outbrake him. You see, we've just let it roll into the apex and so close to making contact, but he gives us just enough room, and we manage to pull it up just in time to not do any damage. Already starting to feel the effects of tyre wear as we're getting to the end of lap 4, going through the very fast section of turns 12, 13, 14, and all the time that we are behind the Sauber, we are losing time to both Ferrari and Return, who has made a massive leap to the front of the field and really pulled out a decent gap at the beginning of the race. As we go into turn 15, braking as late as possible, going down the inside, absolute Daniel Ricciardo dive bomb, but we've made it stay a little bit of wheel banging on the exit, but we do have DRS and rich fuel mixer. Do we have the legs in order to come up to turn 1, using that slightly lowered amount of downforce, hopefully trying to pull out a decent enough gap to cover him off into turn 1. Slightly tighter line just to make sure he can't come back on us. And down into turn 2, we want to keep it nice, neat and tidy and get on power as early as possible to try and pull away. And we have got past the Sauber. Now on lap 6, trying to see if we can get a really nice late apex through turns 15 to get a good run on Ferrari. In this dry conditions, we do seem to have the faster car, and also our soft tyres are helping us make inroads through the middle sector, as we do just have higher mechanical grip. So moving to the inside of turn 1, he moves once and he closes the gap off, trying to hold on the inside, but the gap just disappeared in the braking zone, and then comes back at us. We're going to have to give him the room. We get on the power, but we wouldn't be able to make the stick on that time. Wasn't really happy with the defending from him there. And as we go onto lap 7, you see the rain is starting to come down, and going for one more lap on these dry tyres before we move over to the intermediate tyres. As Jeff suggests, do the very same thing as I just said. We're going to see if we can make a move on the inside, go on the inside, brake as late as possible, manage to keep it clean. We do run wide of the apex, but for now it's okay. We get a little bit of oversteer, and the Ferrari just comes flying across the inside of us. We've lost the position to the Sauber, who then gets wheel spin on the exit of the corner, almost make contact with the back of his car and lose our wing. but fortunately we managed to keep our nose clean and avoid any contact, as that could have been devastating to our race. But unfortunately have dropped back down to third position, as the rain is really starting to come down heavy now, and this is the point where we do need to be moving onto the intermediate tyres, because every second we're losing more and more time on these dry tyres because they're getting colder, the track is getting wetter. You see DRS disabled, that means we are now racing in official wet conditions, and the car is just feeling so unsteady at this point in the race. It's heavy fuel, old, cold, soft, dry tyres. You can see traction as we try to come through turn 9 is absolutely appalling, just trying to keep on track. Fourth gear, getting so much wheel spin. You see Ferrari in front of us gets a massive oversteer moment, barely holds onto the car. Usually we would slam down on the throttle and really try to capitalise on that mistake, but we just don't have the traction available to us. Now absolutely crawling through the final sector of the circuit. Ferrari getting more and more twitchy. Oddly, the medium tyres I would have expected to be providing here with more grip at this point in the race, but maybe it's something to do with setup in terms of downforce. But certainly it seems that although we ourselves are certainly not comfortable in these conditions, we do seem to have slightly more confidence. See, get a bit of a better entry into the pits, and every second count this as Ferrari in front of us gets a massive oversteer moment as we come into the speed limit zone. He barely is going to get it stopped in time, almost wipes out his car altogether. But on lap 9, this is now the point of the race where I am starting to feel very uneasy about the outcome. We're going into full wet conditions, and around us we have some very quick drivers, and getting slightly held up there by the Ferrari, unfortunately, but do at least re-emerge out of the pits in front of the Sauber that we took so long to try and overtake. So as the track is going to be getting wetter and wetter, it's really a case of damage limitation at this point. We've done so well to get ourselves into this position on the field, but now it's a case of just trying to make sure we can maintain it, or at least lose the minimal amounts of position. You see, go on to lap 10, really struggling for braking down into turn 1, actually ends up giving an opportunity to the Sauber behind. Sauber really has got himself hooked up. You see how much more pressure he's putting us under in these wet conditions versus the dry conditions we were in only moments ago. To come down into turn 3, braking about 120 metres from the apex, Sauber is going to dive to the inside and would get past us, and that would be us down into 4th position with only having been on these tyres for a lap. But as you see, the Sauber in front of us has got it all wrong coming out of turn 2, which is going to give us an opportunity to try and reclaim that 3rd position. As we head towards turn 3, we're going to go to the inside. We have a very decent run. We're going to try and outbrake him, but it's so difficult in these conditions. But he's just about going to hold it and go around the outside of us, but that has now given us a bad exit heading towards turn 5 and 6. And see, France has managed to absolutely sweep around the outside of us. I don't know what setup he's using, or if he's running much higher downforce, but just did not have the grip to compete with that exit. And now we find ourselves in P5 with the recovering Wattmaster, who has made himself to P6, but France completely outbrakes himself into turn 1, takes us by surprise, but we do for now reclaim 4th position. So positions changing all the time, and we just want to be as high up as possible, but it looks like going down into turn 3 once more is going to outbrake us as we're trying to pull it up on the apex. He's got the inside line, trying to get a good exit out of there. This is where we lost the position last time, going through the fast left and right hand. He just has so much more grip around the outside. We're just going to have to concede the position because there's just nothing we can do. Just so much more grip. So unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we would once again drop down to P5, and all this battling and our slightly reduced pace would mean that Wattmaster was closing on to the back of us. But at this point in the race, it's now classed as full wet conditions, so all of the cars in front of us have actually pitted for the full wet tyres, but myself and Wattmaster, we've decided to stay out. We're going to try and extend this intermediate stint because it is meant to dry up later on in the Grand Prix, and I know that I don't have the pace to compete with the other guys if I do the the same strategy as them. The only way I'm going to be able to make up any positions from where I am right now is to try and do something different. That's exactly what myself and Wattmaster are now doing. Lap 14, see Jeff trying desperately to get us to switch over to the wet tyres, because as of right now it is the faster tyre, but it's not working for me. I'm going to try and do something different. We see return on those full wet tyres, how much time he's gained on us in the space of just a couple of laps. He gets a much better exit as we go towards the hairpin of turn 9, can brake so much later, can get on the power so much earlier, and that leaves us susceptible to Wattmaster behind. Even on the wet tyres, still struggling with a bit of traction, but just about keeps it together. We've run wide of the apex, and using that lean fuel mixture to really try and give us as much traction out there as possible, but it's so difficult to keep this car on the track. But Wattmaster has got quite a nice run on us. He's going to outbrake us into turn 14, and going over the crest, we just don't have anything to compete with that, and trying to get on the power as early as possible, but he's got the position. Can we do anything down into turn 15? We're staying in the toe. Is there any way that we can dive to the inside and outbrake him? We're going to try and roll it into the corner. He's left the door open. We're staying as tight as possible to try and make sure we don't actually end up touching. And that's a case of trying to get the best exit out of that corner. I'm going to put it up into rich fuel mixture. Obviously no DRS at this point in the race due to the horrifically wet conditions. As we get ourselves back into second position, but we're still on the outside of turn 1. We have to leave a bit of room. We're going slightly wide of the apex. The Force India is still there, rolling down into turn 2, trying desperately to hold on to the position and get on the power. Wattmaster, he's got superior traction out there and has got in front, but a slightly dampened exit by the line that he had to take. Try and see if we can have a look at the inside into turn 3, but it's not happening. We don't have the pace and we don't have the confidence in the car to try and do so. And you see 2.7 seconds gap already to Wattmaster as we come on to lap 17. The Sauber, who we were fighting with for so long earlier on the wet tyres, is now challenging around the outside of us into turn 1. We now have Grant also challenging the back of us. It's just we're being attempted to be overtaken left, right and centre, and we just don't have anything to work with at this point in the race. The wet tyres are easily the superior tyres, but can the cars around us extend enough of the gap so that if they have to pit again later on, will this stint have been worth it enough? See, Rance does outbrake us, but does run a bit wide, but even then, the amount of traction he has coming out of the corner, we just don't have anything to fight with. So in the meantime, it's just a case of keep the car on track, and maybe the weather will end up coming back towards us later on in the race and we can make up some positions. And now we're actually being challenged by the Ferrari that we had a bit of a run in earlier on with in the Grand Prix, so I don't really want to give up the position too easily, because I wasn't too happy with defence that took place earlier on. But on these tyres and with our setup and confidence, there's just nothing that I have to fight with, and in the space of half a lap we've already dropped down to P6, and we're now being challenged by Neil, who earlier on in the Grand Prix was quite up there up the field, but got caught up, I believe, in some of that earlier contact to go into what would usually be a very fast double right-hander. He just simply outbrakes us and goes straight past us, and would get the move done before turn 9. In the space of those couple of laps, Wattmaster pitted for a fresh set of intermediate tyres, which has put him behind us. I'm not sure if that's the right way to go, because at the moment the difference between a fresh set of intermediates and the set that I'm on, I'm not sure there's a big enough difference for him to really make up that much time. So it's going to be interesting to see, but lap by lap, cars in front of us are pitting for the intermediate tyres now, and we've stayed out, and the weather is drastically changing. It's just slight drizzle now as opposed to the absolute thunderstorm that it was earlier. We've managed to promote ourselves up to P4, so staying out on these tyres has actually managed to come back to us, and we just need to make sure that we can get to the end of the Grand Prix now, because tyres, they're starting to burn up a bit. We're getting near to puncture territory, but we're so close to the end of the Grand Prix. We just need to do these last 1.5 laps to see. Already so close, and just using lead mixture as often as possible on the exits to put the tyres under such little stress. And it would be the Sauber that would take his first win of the season as return would actually end up dropping it so close to the end and losing himself a bunch of time after having such a massive lead at the beginning of the race. But we would cross the line and finish in P4 in front of Wattmaster, only going to gain a couple of points in the championship, but a couple of points gain, it could all come down to such a tiny margin by the time we get to the end of Brazil. So who knows, this may be a crucial point in the season for us. But a new face to the winning stage for the AOR group, and it was a great race by him. We had some fantastic racing, so well-deserved victory. For ourselves, not the result I particularly would have liked. Would have liked if I could have got onto the podium, but Malaysia, not a track that I was looking forward to, and especially in the wet, P4 is something which I have to be relatively happy with given the conditions we were facing. So that would be it. Unfortunately, I will not be posting a video for round 13 of Japanese Grand Prix because I'm actually attending the Silverstone Classic, which I'm very excited for, but that will affect our challenge for the F7 title. So we shall have to see how things go in the remaining races of the season. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.